Like Elaine said, I'm Lisa. I'm a risk and safety intelligence analyst from RSSB, and the plan is to have a bit of a chat about health data, and particularly a suite of projects and guidance that we've produced that comes under Health Insights. So just as a little bit of a background, I guess, I am really short. Thank you. Just as a bit of background, Health Insights was an idea that came off the back of an ORR recommendation. So we know that we've done a brilliant job in reducing safety events in the last 30 years, but having done that, health seems to have been left behind a little bit. So the plan is to try and bring health on a par with safety in terms of measuring health, monitoring what's going on, and just using those insights that we can gain from data to try and reduce ill health on the network. So Health Insights has taken a three-phase approach. We started this project back in 2019, I want to say, maybe, with our very first project around the development of a composite metric for health data. So if you've heard of FWI, we wanted to essentially design something that worked for health in a similar way that FWI does for safety. If you've not heard of FWI, it's basically a statistical measure that's given to safety events to measure their impact and outcome. So that was our first sort of approach. We designed this composite metric that is now known as HWI. It is an award-winning project, just going to plug that in there. And then after that, we also looked at how we can design a system to collect health data more generally, beyond just HWI, how we can collect that data that feeds into HWI, and essentially what the industry needed from us. So we ran a bit of a recon requirements gathering exercise, and that's that second purple-ish box with phase one. So we went out to industry, we hosted workshops with different companies, spoke to the ORR, unions, DFT, to try and understand, firstly, what data actually existed, if any, how they were collecting that data, how it was stored, and whether companies were actually doing anything with it. And unsurprisingly, the answer was mostly no, that data is not being used, it's sat in a system, it's sat on paper, we've ignored it essentially. So we've done that, we've gone out, we've got requirements, and off the back of that, we then built a Power BI system and a data collection system. So that's our phase 2 project. We built, I will go through it in a minute, but we built a system using all of the kinds of metrics the industry was already collecting, things like sickness absence, occupational health referrals, health surveillance. Built a Power BI dashboard, set up benchmarking meetings so that companies can send data into us and then actually get something out of it, so it's not just another exercise of sending data off and losing it. We then piloted that system with 21 companies. We were very top heavy, which is, again, not that surprising. But we did also have some supply and infrastructure companies as well pilot the system for us. So I'll show you the sort of process that we came up with in a moment. But the next step now, which is what we started working on last summer, is full implementation of that system across the industry. So we've got our 21 companies, but we know that the rail industry has hundreds of suppliers and TOCs and FOCs. So our plan is to try and expand that system out to the rest of industry at a bare minimum to the companies that we know are submitting safety data into RSSB. But then beyond that, we also want to expand out to more of the supply chain so we can try and get a clearer, more complete image of what's going on with health within industry and what we can do with those insights from the data to actually help companies. I appreciate this is very, very small, but just a bit of an overview of the kinds of indicators that we are collecting in the system. So like I mentioned, we have got a lot of sickness absence data and occupational health data. They are our most complete main sections of data that we collect at the moment. We break that down by reasons for absence and outcomes, reasons for occupational health outcomes. On top of that, we are also collecting health surveillance data. So this is less well populated, poorer data quality. We know a lot of companies are still collecting this information through paper and random Excel databases and all sorts. It's not the easiest to get a hold of. But we do collect things like hand-on vibration syndrome, the outcomes of hearing impairment assessments, and a couple of other bits and pieces of health surveillance compliance. And then thirdly, we have got this other category. It's a bit of a catch-all. We set this up during COVID. So one of the main things you can see on there that's not actually relevant anymore is COVID-19 indicators. We have kept that in place though, so that when another pandemic does inevitably happen, we have something there that we can readjust essentially. But it's also things like demographic data, drug and alcohol data. Just the process that we came up with that I mentioned, I won't go into this in too much detail, but the most important thing here is probably the benchmarking section down on the bottom left. All of that data that is submitted into us all goes through processing and cleansing, everything else. Then once that data is uploaded into our dashboard, we set up benchmarking group meetings with each sector. So we've got a TOC 1 and an infrastructure and supply chain sector meeting at the moment. Within those meetings, we pull out specific insights of what the data is telling us that quarter. So, for example, the last benchmarking round we pulled out that musculoskeletal disorders were extremely high, especially amongst the infrastructure and supply chain, which again, not that surprising, but we have got a lot of work going on around MSDs at the moment. We've got a lot of resources that we could share within those benchmarking group meetings. So that was our main focus. We've done benchmarking group meetings on mental health, and we've got lots of others coming up that will be topic specific depending on what we can pull out of the data. And from that, we then publish not only company reports that go to the company themselves, not public information, but we publish a quarterly industry report as well. So all of that insight that we've learned from benchmarking group meetings, all of the data goes into this quarterly report. It's thrown on the RSSB website, and it's taken to board meetings, it's taken to internal occupational health forums with different companies, both participating and non-participating companies, so that everyone can learn from that data that we are pulling out of Health Insights. And that's also disseminated amongst all the usual industry groups as well. Just wanted to give a bit of a screenshot of the Power BI side of the Data Hub, so everything that's coming out. There are 5 main sections to the Data Hub, which depends... what data goes into which section depends on what we're kind of looking at. But the 5 main sections are the industry view chart, so this gives a bit of a picture of what's going on across the industries, across each of our sectors. There's no personal data in there or anything like that. So things like lost time rate for the industry go in there. We've got the main reasons for sickness absence across the entire industry, across each sector. Then we have got this individual companies view section, which is probably the most useful in terms of benchmarking and individual companies taking this data to their board and occupational health forums. Within that, each company can see their own data identified with their name and then a bunch of anonymized data points as well. So for example, if it's Network Rail, they'll be able to see Network Rail, this is your data, and anonymous A, B, C. Then we have also got a data quality assessment section. So like with everything, we are very aware that our health data does not have the best quality at the moment. So we do run a DQ assessment for each of those data points. And then we have got this guidance and information section, and I'll show you a little bit more about the knowledge base we've built as well. This just links to the various different reports and bits of guidance and resources that might be useful. And then just finally, we have got at the bottom the company report section. So I mentioned that each company gets their own individual report that reports their data against industry averages. All of that is on the dashboard now, so people can go in and look at it whenever they like. They don't have to wait for us to send them a Word document. It's all there available for them. Just pulled out a few screenshots of different types of charts. This probably wasn't the best one to choose because it is a little bit busy. But this is an example of our industry view charts. So there's no company level data on there. It's just giving an overview of all of our different sickness reasons. This one here is probably a bit more interesting. It's our lost time rate. So this is one of our company view charts. Again, I'm just going to use Network Rail as an example. If Network Rail logged into this, they'd be able to see whichever of those bars was them, and they'd be able to see where they sit within the industry. And then this is one that everyone is always interested in because it's cost. Cost is one of the things we calculate with the data we get sent in. So we do get sent the total number of days. We use a average day rate to calculate the costs for each individual person per year. It is very, very high at the moment. I think last time I checked, it was I think, just over £2,000 per employee per year. So if you think about how many people are employed in the industry, that's a hell of a lot of money we are throwing at sickness absence each year. And then I think this is the final chart that I've screenshotted. This is an example of one of our individual view charts. So we can break down the sickness absence. It's not just all there in a giant confusing pie chart. Companies can go in, and if they've got a particular issue they want to look at their own data for, they want to look at industry data for, they can select whatever reason from that top right-hand side. They can see how they're performing over time, and then there is also this little information circle in the bottom that you'll be able to see. This will link them through to a bunch of resources that not just RSSB publish, but from the HSE, from the NHS, anywhere essentially, so they can select a certain type of absence, a certain condition, and be linked into this knowledge base. I think that's it for random screenshots. One last thing I want to mention before I give you a bit of an overview of where we're going with this is the HWI that I mentioned. I won't go into too much detail because it does get kind of technical, but it is essentially a tool that's used for not just measuring and monitoring health over time, but it's also a benchmarking tool. It can be used in cost-benefit analysis. So if we know that we've got 3 different interventions that the company's looking at, they can look at whatever condition it is on this list down the bottom. If they're looking at MSDs, for example, they can look at their number of MSD cases per year, pop that into our CBA tool, and it will tell them whether each intervention is worth doing, essentially, in terms of cost. Just very quickly, I've whizzed through this. So where we are at the moment, so like I said, we are planning on implementing this across the entire industry, starting with those safe insights reporting companies, but then expanding out to more suppliers and smaller companies that maybe aren't reporting safety events centrally into RSSB. We want, I know it said 45 on the earlier slide, but we've changed it. We're trying to meet our target. So we're going to implement to 30 companies by the end of this year. And if there's more, that's great. But if not, that is our main target this year. We are also trying to digitalise the submission side of things a little bit. So what I didn't mention is when we set this up, we were collecting data through Excel. We were a little bit old school. It wasn't the most efficient. It does involve a lot of cleansing and boring processing work. We have recently been building a Power Apps reporting tool. So companies will be able to go straight in online, pop their data in. We won't get any of the error messages. It's on each company to make sure that data is right that they're inputting. And it will go straight into the dashboard without having to wait for us to process it, basically. We are in UAT stages of that at the moment, so that will hopefully go live by the end of this year. And the sort of big thing that we are working on at the moment is research from the insights that we are gaining. So we have set up a series of essentially mini research projects. We're calling them deep dives, but we've pulled out certain data points that we know there are issues across the industry, and we're going to essentially have a chat to industry, see what's going on, see what tools we can build and deliver to help people fight those issues. So our first one, which has just kicked off, is around workplace stress. So we know that stress is a massive issue in the industry. So our plan is to essentially build a bit of a stress register, but specific to railways, as opposed to the generic life registers that exist at the moment. But what we do after that is entirely up to our stakeholders. Stakeholders do get to essentially vote on what they want to do with the data, and what will be most useful to them. And that's pretty much it. I'm going to use this as a bit of a plug that if anyone is interested in submitting their data and getting involved, just give us a shout and we'll be able to give you a bit of a more in-depth intro and let you know how you can get involved with it.
Thank you, Lisa. We'll come back and do some questions with a panel at the end. £2,000 per person working in the industry, is that what you said? You don't need me to do the maths. That is a huge amount of money. A huge amount of money. It's a lot of zeros. Right. Thank you ever so much for that, Lisa. Our next presentation is all about reliable, non-invasive drug testing. something that I know absolutely nothing about, and I'm fascinated to hear more. So I'd like to welcome to the stage Monica Barbosa from RSS Infrastructure and her colleague Leander Waring from Autos Management, part of the same group, I believe.